Hello and welcome to Channel's Book Club. My name is Olakunle Kasumo and it's great to be on the show where we discuss all things books. Well, General Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida's book is still trending. It's out there. A Journey in Service is still trending out there. Well, people are talking about the chapter on June 12, but there are a lot of other things in this book that many people are not paying attention to. For example, we all know that in 1986, celebrated journalist Dele Giwa of Newswatch magazine was assassinated. What a tragedy that was back then. And the rumor on the streets was that he was killed by the government of the day under Ibrahim Babangida. That was a rumor on the streets, and it was being claimed out there by even the lawyers of Newswatch. The lead lawyer of Newswatch at that time, the late Gani Fawahimi, was quite vocal about that fury, very vocal about it, if you can remember well. Well, what did Babangida write when it came to Dele Giwa in his autobiography? That's something people are not paying attention to. He actually wrote about Dele Giwa's death here. And he started by saying that he was very good friends with Dele Giwa. They were quite friendly. I read here somewhere, page 205, where he said, "The novelty and tragic impact of the incident badly shook the nation. I was equally shocked by it all. On a personal level, I had just lost a friend." So he described Dele Giwa as a friend. Now, what kind of friend? Mr. Giwa was a good friend, like a few other senior journalists in the country. We spoke often on the phone and met a few times. So that kind of friend. They spoke often on the phone, they met a few times. I valued his deep insight on national issues and respected his views and reach as a media leader. So first of all, he says, very good friend. So, and then he went on to say, I had nothing to do with his death. Now, that's something he has said a number of times. He had nothing to do with his death. He had nothing to do with his death. His government had nothing to do with his death. But what is interesting here is that Babangida explained his own reason for why Giwa was killed. And it's an interesting explanation. He explains in his book, he believes that Dele Giwa was killed because of him, Babangida's government. Interesting, huh? That Dele Giwa was killed as part of the effort to discredit his government. Remember, at that time, Babangida's government had serious trust deficits. The announcements on election dates, etc., a lot of things were happening in the country at that point in time, and they were struggling to win the trust of Nigerians and so on. But, I mean, this was 1986, so it was relatively new in his tenure. So we can't speak much of election date changes, but there were a lot of other things that were going on in the country at that time. And the government was trying to build trust with the Nigerian people. So according to Babangida, part of why Dele Giwa was killed was part of the efforts to discredit his own government. So they were trying to get at him, so they killed Dele Giwa. That's how he explained it. What do you make of that? Well, I'll leave that to you. Get the book, read it. A lot in here, and people will keep debating and keep discussing. Like I say to people, read, but form your own view. Read, but form your own views. Very important. Well, from politics, from Babangida's book, to a work of fiction that is really intriguing. Immigration is an important global theme. This book knocks it off the park. It's a novel of a young Nigerian who got frustrated by happenings in Nigeria. Nigeria was getting more and more difficult, so this young man began to dream, like many young people in Nigeria dream today, of relocating, of jackpot-in, as we call it. So he eventually jackpot. Then what happened? Then started a clash of culture, a clash of customs, and a clash of identity. What a book this is. Let's get to meet with our author for the week and enjoy our conversation as we explore her book, the one right on your screen, titled Return to Where I Belong. Enjoy this.
Maggie Offoha is a literary content creator, nurse practitioner, and an author. Offoha holds a bachelor's degree in medical technology from Morgan State University in Baltimore, Maryland, and a bachelor's degree in nursing from the University of Maryland. She is an award-winning poet of many poems, including The Flag of Our Fatherland, Nigeria. She has authored 2 other books titled Dark Shadows on My Part and Poetry for Thought. Maggie Offoha joins Channel's Book Club to discuss her latest book, Return to Where I Belong.
Madam Maggie, welcome to Channel's Book Club.
Thank you.
It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much.
Before we dig into your book, Return to Where I Belong, I like the theme of your book because immigration is something I've been interested in. I am interested in. Nigerians in the diaspora, and most recently, we've been hearing a lot about that, given the state of the Nigerian economy and so on. But we'll come in, we'll dig into your book in a few minutes. But you are a Nigerian in the United States, right? Yes. How long have you been there?
40 years.
40 years?
Yes.
Wow. That's a long time.
A long time.
Were you, how long did you live in Nigeria before you went to the U.S.?
I left at 20, when I was 20 years old.
20 years old?
Yes.
So you had finished high school and all that?
Yes, immediately after high school.
High school, okay. So tell me about that experience.
Leaving home for the first time, leaving everybody that I know, everything I've known, to a different place, a new culture. It was exciting. Yeah, that's what I can say.
That must have been
exciting.
But 40 years there.
Yes.
That's a long time.
It's a long time, yeah. I know.
So you raised your family,
my 6 children, everything. Everything I've learned. I spent more in U.S. than Nigeria. Yeah.
But you have been coming to Nigeria often.
Of course.
Okay.
There are 40 years doesn't mean I went away and then stayed away.
You're not Americanized.
I'm not. You can say I'm not Americanized.
Like Tim.
You read my book. I'm not at all. Now I know you read my book. You can see. Don't leave it. Well, in Nigeria, everybody wears this. So that's nothing America about me.
Okay. Well. We'll talk about Tim very soon.
Okay.
Because Tim is typical. Let's talk generally about your book. I'd like viewers to get to know what this book is about and why you wrote it.
Okay. Why did I write the book? The book is my experience, the experiences of so many people I know who left the shores of Nigeria then and who are living there now, and those who are trying to say, oh, we want to go, we want to go. So I just tried to put everything together and become a book.
You wanted to tell the story, right?
The story.
Of Nigerians moving from here to...
Yes, yes.
And that's a very...
The pros and cons of life, of migration, everything.
Yeah. Would you... we'll come back to your book, but I'll keep probing because your own story is very much aligns with the story of the protagonist in this book.
Yes.
Would you, if you were to rewind time, is it something you would do again?
Given the way things are still in Nigeria, you wouldn't blame me if I say I would do it all over again. Yeah, even that way, say, no, look at what you will say when you get there at the end of the road. I know that now, but looking back, I was like, oh, well, if I can't fit myself, what am I doing here?
Oh, wow. Okay, so what's the story? Return to Where I Belong. The story of the young Ugonna.
Ugonna, yes.
Yeah. Just share that story with viewers in brief.
The story is a story of a young man from a royal family. His father is a king. In Nigeria, as a royal son, he's entitled to certain things. But with the condition of things in Nigeria, he looked around and said, I wanted more for myself. I want to live better than my father lived. Even though I'm a royal child, a royal son, the things I want, I can't get all of them here, so I have to go.
His father was
Ezegu.
Ezegu.
Yes.
Okay, Ezegu. Now, his father was not financially
No.
buoyant, but he was just a king
Yes.
in his community.
Yes.
And he did not want him to go.
No.
Because he was the heir to the throne.
Of course.
Interestingly, he didn't mind his other children going.
No.
But he didn't want
The first son.
Ugonna to go.
Yes.
So go on with that story. And part of, I mean, viewers will be wondering who Tim I mentioned earlier. Part of the reason he didn't want his first son to go was because Tim, his brother, had gone to America and had become totally Americanized.
Yes. Refusing to come home. Yes.
And there are many Nigerians that have become Americanized,
Of
Europeanized.
Yes,
right?
yes. I see them every time. Some are in my family, so.
What happens when somebody is like that?
What do you say to them? You just continue to encourage them that the whole, like I'm here now, when I go back, I say, wow, this is what I saw back home. It's not as bad as you thought. So this and Nigeria have actually developed. You can come home.
So do they believe, they have the mindset that Nigeria is backward? Or how is it like being Americanized? Like in the case of Tim, in your book, Tim was completely disconnected from the culture, from, I mean, the way he spoke, everything about him was just completely, it's as if he had been disconnected from his roots totally. Yeah,
that happens when you don't look back to where you come from. When you leave the shores of Nigeria and you go there and see new things, different things, and you get so attached to them and you don't want to look back, thinking that, oh, this place is not developed. That place is developed. I want 24-hour electricity. I want everything good. But it's just a roses. It's not always as good as it sounds.
But on a light note, while he was upset with his brother being Americanized, he was still taking his dollars.
Of course. Typical. We don't want to, but even up to today, some people say, oh, just stay there, just send us the money. Yeah, so.
Wow. Okay, so continue with that story. So, I mean, so this young man wanted to go to America.
But the father said no, because of what happened to my brother, and moreover, you're my first son. You're supposed to inherit the throne when I'm no more. So if you go, what happens to the throne that have been in a lineage for generations? And you know, like a Nigerian culture, especially Igbo culture, once a heirship or kingship is in a particular family, it's not rotatory. So it goes from one generation to the other. So if one generation abandons it, then that's the end of it. It will go to another generation. And because of that, because this man, he inherited from his father. So he wanted to transfer it back to his own son. Yes.
And then the son says he wants to go to America.
Yeah.
Wahala.
Wahala, big wahala.
Okay, so it's a very interesting story. And like I said earlier on, it's in some ways a typical story.
Yes.
In some ways, not in every way. Now he gets the visa, which is that's
another
interesting.
Process.
I don't think we should say everything in the book. The way he got his visa, eventually gets his visa.
Yeah, which is reality. What happens?
What happens here?
Yeah.
Eventually gets his visa. He's excited. The father again initially did not want him to, despite all that, but eventually, you know, and all that. Now, you wanted to also portray the Igbo side, the Igbo culture in this story. So before you go on with that story of the protagonists, I noticed at the early stages of your book, you were very deliberate in projecting the Igbo culture.
Yes.
Practices, names, culture, and all those things. So that was deliberate, right? That's one of the objectives.
Yes, yes. Because Igbo people have a very rich culture that is not always projected in the global arena. Their lifestyle, their culture traditions, their name, the way they name their children. So everything has a meaning in Igbo language. And I wanted my children to one day pick up this book and be proud to say, I'm from this, I'm an Igbo person.
Yeah, that's very important.
Yes.
Back to the story. Eventually gets the visa, yeah.
Well, he gets the visa, so excited, and bought everything, got ready, got into the plane, and hit the road. So as soon as he hit the tarmac of the airplane that landed in America.
Wahala started.
Initially, everything was glittering, beauty, things that he'd never seen before. Christmas, it was during a Christmas period that he landed, and the snow was everywhere, something that he had never witnessed before. And mind you, he had never been in an airplane before. So once he saw these things, so all the stories he's been reading about America, to him, for that particular moment, came true, was real. Until
an accident.
Yes.
Okay, let's say everything. Okay. So basically, try and summarize it, because I don't want viewers to know everything in the book. I want them to be intrigued to read it. Rather. So fast forward.
Okay, fast forward. The cultural shock hit him when he had an accident, when he had to stay with some people that hosted him for a certain number of weeks or months, and then he needed to start fending for himself.
Reality struck.
Yep. So reality struck. Is no longer getting free meal. Nothing is free anymore. And people back home, in the meantime, are calling him, please send us money. Send us money. And now he came to the realization that it is not all that it's meant to be. Everything that glitters is not good.
Then fast forward again, he gets married, he has 6 children like you. Where did you get the 6 was?
Children.
The 6 was,
you
got that idea from your own story, right?
That's my story. A lot of things here are a lot of the things in the book are my story, and the stories of people I know.
Yeah, I guess as much.
Yeah.
Okay, so he had his children, and then the dilemma of whether or not to stay
in America,
or return back home to take the throne, then came, right?
Yes, because now he's at a crossroad. All his children were born in America, so their life is there. So part of his life is there. Everything has been so far. After all these years, he's in America. His children cannot go home with him at this time. So what does he do? And he's back home. His father is calling him, you need to come and take the throne. So he was at a dilemma. He had to make a decision. So that decision is the crossroad. Does he stay in America like I am now? Do I stay in America, or do I come to Nigeria and stay? It's conflicting.
Don't tell us what eventually happened. But that is a junction you all get to. I say you all because I'm not a diasporian. I mean, I was born here, I live here, grew up here.
Like you.
Yes, but for you, diasporans, that's a junction most of you get to. Is that correct?
That's true.
The junction he was.
Yes.
Do I stay? Do I go back? I mean, it's difficult for me to go back because my children, this is all they know.
Yes.
And this is where they grew up.
Yeah, and then if you don't go back.
And then if I don't go back, am I going to die in this place?
The throne is gone if you don't go back.
The throne is gone. But for most people, there's no throne. But for most people, it's just the allure, the pool of hope.
For most people, there is throne because they still have the land their father inherited from their forefathers. So the properties, let's assume the properties are now the throne.
Yeah.
Are they going to say, okay, forget it?
Yeah. So anything could be a throne for you.
Yeah.
That is pulling you back.
Yes. And then as Igbos, we are people that cherish the places we come from. So deciding not to go is like giving up on your culture, your heritage. So many things you would want your children to get to know. So if I act like Tim, I say, okay, forget it. What becomes of, who am I then? Who will my children be? Would they know where they came from?
So if I were planning to japa now, you give me a lecture.
Please read my book.
Tell me to go and read that book again before
read my book before I make that decision.
Board that plane.
Yeah, before I buy that plane ticket, please read my book.
You sound like, I mean, from Ugona's story and your story, you sound to me like deep down you rather be here, which is perhaps the message return to where I belong. Perhaps that's what that's the message you're about, really.
Yes.
In some ways.
Yes. If you ask a lot of African Americans, they rather know where they came from. They rather know their actual name, not the name the white people gave them, but their actual name. You see what I mean? Mm-hmm. So if I close this chapter, then my children will not know this part of me. Their children, the story goes on. Mm. Yeah.
Incredible. Let me read from, let me read a little excerpt from your book. Chapter 1. The heat of the sun was beating down slowly. The air was both bitter and stale. Ugonna Okeke, a young Igbo man living in the eastern part of Nigeria, had just traveled several hours back to his native village. The journey from Ibadan to Imo State lasted about 6 hours, longer than usual, but he was glad to be back to his home state. As he passed through the market, heading towards his family compound, he spotted a childhood friend and stopped to greet him. Ugo, how far? His old friend Chidi started with a beaming smile. Yes. Chidi, long time. I'm well, but what are you doing here? I heard you took a job in Lagos. Ugonna asked his friend. So, you did not hear, my friend. The textile company I was working for in Lagos sacked all its employees due to lack of business funding by the federal government on private business entities. Now I can't even find work as a cleaner, Chidi explained. It is really interesting.
Typical story.
Yeah.
Typical story.
But my question to you is, I want to speak to you now as a writer.
Okay.
You know, how did you find the experience? I know this is your third book, right?
This is my first book. But I've been writing poetry too.
Yeah, you published 2 earlier books. You published 2 books earlier.
Actually, I published all 3 of them at the same time.
At the same time, okay. Mm-hmm. So you have 2 other published books.
Yes.
But this is your main prose.
Yes.
Your main novel.
Yes.
This is the main novel. Now, so how did you develop that writing? That writing skill. Was it born out of reading a lot, or what's your story? How did you? Because I like the way you wrote. I like the way you write.
Okay.
Yeah. How did you?
My story. I'm an avid reader.
You read a lot.
I read a lot. I'm very inquisitive personality. I want to know everything. If I see something, I must follow it. And
what would you typically read? A novel?
Oh, I read novels.
Fiction, non-fiction?
I read everything. Newspapers, political. I'm a political junkie, news junkie, so everything junkie. So I read everything. I can't say I read this. I have a preference for this or that. But in terms of fiction, the first novel I read was Things Fall Apart.
Oh.
And I was hooked on it from the first day I read it. So I talked about Igbo people, the colonization era Igbos, right? Yeah. So, and I'm writing, like this is post-colonization experiences. Yeah. Yeah, so I read a lot, I write a lot. Actually, I don't have a literary degree. Yeah. I'm a professional, ICU nurse, a nurse practitioner, but I find a joy in reading. And so it's like I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Yeah, I'm a science major, but also a writer, a published writer.
Nurse by day,
writer by night.
Or is it nurse by night, writer by day? Because
it depends on what shift I want to work.
Shift.
It depends on which shift I have the most money.
Okay, thank you very much. It's been nice speaking to you,
thank you
about this book and getting it introduced to our viewers.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us on Channels Book Club.
Thanks so much.
And thank you for all the enlightenment. And we look forward to your next and your next.
Which is coming.
Margaret's book is a page turner, Return to Where I Belong. Well, for those of us who are keen on the theme of immigration, but this book is really not just about immigration. It's about a range of other things as you listened to Margaret just now. But get a copy of the book, read it, and then let's know what you think about it. Share with us your thoughts on any of our social media platforms displayed on your screen. My name is Olakunle Kasumo. Remember, one great book can change your life. Bye-bye.